Hello, my name is Jason Ankin and this is my vlog channel. What is up, guys? So today I'm just going to do another vlog. This is sort of I promised that I was going to start doing more, getting back into vlogging a bit more frequently. And I decided I was going to do vlogs a bit more centered around philosophy and sort of things like self-actualization. So today, basically, I am doing I'm just going for a drive today. It's a really good day out. Very sunny, the skies are really clear, so the sun's beaming in Northern Ireland today, and I was just bored sitting in the house, so I decided to go out for a wee drive, and then I just parked up here in a car park, and I was just eating a bit of food, so I decided I was going to record a vlog. Why not? So today's video is going to be about something called having an existential crisis. So I've had multiple, let's just say multiple existential crises. So that's mainly the topic of what this video is going to be about. Now, I have to give you a heads up. If you're not someone that's interested in things like existentialism, or if you're not really interested in things like philosophy, this may not be ideally suited for you. This is going to get real deep real quick. So yeah, what is an existential crisis basically? So an existential crisis is basically a dawning realization of the meaninglessness of life. So I've read books on philosophy probably for about 10 years. I started off reading books on, say for example, I started reading books on world mythology, then I started reading books on traditional philosophy, then I got into things like psychology. Currently, right now, I don't read a lot of traditional sort of modern philosophy books because I think it's just too reductionist, and all of the arguments have kind of been solved. All of the problems have kind of been figured out. So it's sort of more like an intellectual exercise where you're just learning things as opposed to actually doing real philosophy, which is actually thinking about life. So I haven't read a lot about existentialism, but I have read a lot about more like spiritual philosophies and stuff like that. Things like Taoism, Buddhism, Hermetic philosophy. And these sort of things kind of put information in front of your brain. They put information in front of you that makes you kind of look at life very differently. You start to see, when you spend 10 years studying things like philosophy, it changes your perception. It changes how you view the world. And on many occasions, especially during periods of stress, when I'm doing a lot of work, I sort of just question, what is the point? Why am I doing all of this stuff for? Because when you look at sort of reality, when you look at sort of the nature of reality, you realize that it's all changing. It changes constantly. So it's sort of a good analogy that I like to use is if you're somebody who does like from physical fitness training, I've learned that when you get physically fit through doing fitness training over and over again, the problem happens when you stop training. When you stop doing physical fitness training, you become unfit. So it becomes this constant uphill struggle to constantly improve your fitness and get fitter and fitter and fitter. Now, I'm only using this as an example to illustrate my point. This applies to absolutely everything that you do. No matter what it is that you do, whether it's to do with your mind, whether it's to do with your emotions, whether it's to do with your body, whether it's to do with your relationships, whether it's to do with your career, your education, in order for you to actually continually grow and continually develop and continually get better, you always have to put forth effort. Now, the second you stop putting forth this effort, it just all starts to go away. If you're a master at something, if you absolutely are a master at something, it does not matter if you're a master at something. The second you stop doing it, your skill wanes. And it's sort of this idea then why do we bother continually doing things if in the end it's all just going to mean nothing? You know, when you die, you don't take anything with you. You don't actually take anything with you beyond sort of your life. And then you take it a step further and you sort of think, okay, well, maybe you pass on your genetics and you pass on things to your family or whatever. You pass on your genetics to your children, and then they continue the thing on. But then you think, okay, well, actually, what if when the human race becomes extinct? And you think, well, okay, well, the world will still be around. Then what if when the sun eventually obliterates the solar system, actually, when it gets too large, and basically wipes out the Earth? And then it goes on and on and on until eventually sort of the galaxies start to rip apart, and then eventually the universe, according to scientists, will end in a big rip, which is like when all of energy and all of mass and matter basically just dissipates and dissolves into nothingness. So when you sort of look at life that way and you sort of think, oh no, everything's just going to end in nothingness, and you sort of come to the conclusion, what the hell is the point in anything then? Why do we do anything? Why do we set goals? Why do we strive after things? Why do we care? Why do we bother to do anything? And many people will come to the conclusion, and I have done this on myself on many occasions, especially recently, that life is just fundamentally meaningless and there's nothing to life whatsoever. And I know this is a really pessimistic worldview. Existentialism itself, in my opinion, is a very pessimistic philosophy. But the problem with this argument is very simple. All you need to do is take this one question further. Now, obviously, if you've come to the conclusion that reality is meaningless, you sort of ask yourself, well, what is the point in life? What is the point in even living if reality is just meaningless? We're just going to, sit on this rock floating about waiting to die. And it's not a very positive sort of way to live your life. And it's these type of things that could actually lead people to doing things like committing suicide, or just completely giving up on life and just losing motivation. Individuals that become homeless, or they maybe just fall into drugs and alcohol and stuff like that there. And it's this sort of existential sort of worldview can lead to a very negative outcome. And that's if you're not mentally tough enough, you're not mentally robust enough to actually cope with the problem. But like I said, if you take this question, at least from my understanding of it, if you take this question one step further, and that is you ask the question, what is it about reality that is meaningless? What actually is, can you actually define the meaninglessness of your argument? So if you've come to the idea that reality is this just pointless, meaningless thing, then take it one question further and ask yourself, can you pinpoint, can you define what it is that is meaningless about life? And at that point you realize something very, in my opinion, this was kind of liberating and understanding, because at that point you realize that the argument has to collapse in on itself, because you cannot define something that has no meaning, which is really sort of paradoxical. And this is why sort of the argument collapses in on itself, and this idea that you sort of that reality is pointless. Well, actually, what is it about reality that's pointless? You can't answer that, because you cannot define something that has no meaning. And that's why the argument just folds in and almost becomes pointless. It's a pointless argument to actually have. So you see, the argument of a pointless reality is in itself pointless, because you're arguing about something that has no meaning, and you can't define anything that has no meaning, so therefore the argument itself is meaningless. So that's kind of a way of using rationalization. You're rationalizing it a step further to try and get yourself out of that problem. But the fact is, this is where it starts to flip around, and this is where it starts to actually become a positive thing, because regardless of the meaning of life, regardless of the meaning of your life, somebody else's life is, regardless of the meaning of the world, humanity, the universe, regardless of all of that, life is happening. So it is, life is actually happening. And when you sort of realize this, that all of the philosophers, all of the scientists, all of the theologians, and mystics throughout history, none of them can define the meaning of life. And none of them can define it. So, but the fact still remains, here it is. Reality is actually happening. So it is. Reality is actually happening. And this to me tells me something significant about this experience that we're experiencing right now, this experience that we're having in life. And it's kind of weird talking about this. Like, I'm in here sitting in my car in a car park in Lurgan in Northern Ireland, and it's sort of weird talking about these things in my little relative day-to-day experience, and here I am talking about sort of these big topics. But the fact still remains that life is happening, and it's extremely significant in my opinion, because nobody can explain how the universe got here, because nobody can explain what life is, because nobody can explain what consciousness is and what experience is. To me, regardless of its meaning, that makes it significant, and it makes it experience to be valued, regardless of the meaning of life. And that's something that I'm starting to become much more attached to, the idea of, regardless of the meaning of life, it is something that should actually be valued, because nobody can actually define it. No one can actually understand what reality is. And so to me, that sort of strikes like a state of like awe and wonder. Like when I look at things, when I look at like I was up the mountains the other day doing my last vlog, and I remember I was walking back from the place where I recorded my vlog, and I looked back out. There was this vast sort of opening where I was walking. I could see like a partial section of the mountain range, and I was like awestruck at the size of one of those mountains. I looked back and I went, whoa, look how big that is in mass. It was huge. I was just trying to calculate in my brain, how much does that weigh? Like, how big is that? And I couldn't possibly come up with a number. I could just throw out a number, like a million tons, and I could be off by 10 million. I don't even know. And it was just sort of this sort of idea, like, holy crap, that is huge. And it was sort of, that's just a little window. That is just a little tiny itty bitty window of what's actually occurring on this planet. That's a tiny little window of what's occurring in the solar system. It's a tiny little window of what's occurring in the universe as a whole, in this galaxy. There is so much to be valued and so much to be appreciated when you sort of realize that you've only got this little window of opportunity, and you just sort of look at things. You could look at little tiny details and be awestruck by it. Like, you could look at like a little insect walking about, or like, what is that? What is that little strange thing moving about? Or you could look at, like, I don't know, a flower, or an experience that you have with somebody, or, like I said, a piece of scenery that just takes you back. You just realize, holy moly, that is amazing. And sort of, to me, this is where, regardless of the meaning of life, regardless of the meaning of my existence, regardless of whatever I do, regardless of whatever I achieve, regardless of how people think about me, or regardless of what other people do, regardless of where humanity is going to go, regardless of the world, what's the future of the world, even regardless of all the problems, because most people will look at the problems and go, well, that's a reason to justify why life is crap, is there's so much evil in the world and so much damage. And the reality is, you know, those evil people are just ignorant. They don't realize that, in fact, what they're doing is going to amount to nothing in the long run. You know, all of the power struggle that goes on in the world, when we see things like war and right down to individual greed and jealousy, it's all based upon ignorance of the fact that it's going to amount to nothing in the long run. And ignorance is not something to be judged, because it's actually something you should actually forgive people, because everybody to a certain extent is ignorant of something. So just because people are egotistical, power hungry, destructive in nature, only out for themselves, you should forgive them, because they're just ignorant fools of the fact that what they're going to do is going to amount to nothing in the end. Just the exact same as what everybody's doing. So then it goes back to the fact that, okay, right, regardless of the meaning, life should just be valued. It should be appreciated, because you've got this little window of opportunity to experience whatever the hell this is. Nobody knows. No one actually knows. And anyone who tells you that they do know, they don't. And in fact, there's no argument that they can use to confirm that they do know. So yeah, this is something like I said, I'm starting to attach myself more to this idea of just valuing your experience, regardless of the meaning. Because you can value everything. You can value the fact that you're a human and you have consciousness. You can value the fact that you can experience emotional experiences like love, joy, peace. You can value the fact that you can pretty much do anything with your body. You can actually construct your life whatever way you want. You can customly design it and create it whatever way you want. You can value people. You can value just those moments where you sort of sit back and you see something in reality and you go, whoa, that's amazing. So this is what I like about the idea of being more appreciative and being more grateful, is simply because you can do it. You can value everything more, and there's no limitation. You can't like, for example, with optimism, you can actually be overly optimistic. But with appreciation, you can't over-appreciate something. You can't overvalue something. If it's true value and it's true meaning. And this is not some woo-woo idea of like sort of just having appreciation. It's actually got hard science backing it up. There's a psychological discipline called positive psychology, and positive psychology has actually done a lot of research on things like practicing gratitude, practicing appreciation and stuff like this. And what they've concluded is that this is one of the best psychological tools that we can use to actually improve long-term sustained happiness. So yeah, this is something I'm starting to become more attached to. When I get into those existential slumps and I sort of think to myself, what is this all about? Why am I doing this? I just start to think, well, regardless of its meaning, just appreciate it. Even the bad things, and even the sort of, just try to appreciate every second of your life, because nobody understands it. And yeah, it's just sort of, life is a bit of a beautiful mystery, and it doesn't have a meaning, and the argument that it is meaningless is also meaningless as well. So yeah, that's all I'm going to do for today. I told you I'm going to get more deeper and more philosophical, so I hope you appreciate this vlog, and I appreciate you watching this vlog. So thanks for watching. There's going to be more topics similar to this on the same level. If you're not sort of used to this type of stuff, stand by. So yeah, my name is Jason Ankin. This is my vlog channel, and I will see you later, guys. Bye.